David asked Ahimelech, "Do you have a spear or sword?" The king's business was so urgent that I didn't even have time to grab a weapon. "I only have the sword of Goliath the Philistine, whom you killed in the valley of Elah," the priest replied. "It is wrapped in a cloth behind the ephod. Take that if you want it, for there is nothing else here." "There's nothing like it," David replied. "Give it to me." So, David had some history with that weapon already, which is probably hinted at, like, him saying there's nothing like it. It kind of gives me the vibe of, like, yes, something familiar. What's up, cool people? My name's Matt. Welcome back to our Bible study. Okay. So, we're now in 1 Samuel chapter 21. Last chapter, David and Jonathan communicated. David was pretty sure Saul had it out for him, but Jonathan wasn't aware at the time, so he and David came up with this, method, with this signal, I guess, for David to know whether or not it was okay. And turns out it wasn't. Turns out Saul did actually want David dead, to the point where once Jonathan mentioned that David had plans to not be there for a certain festival, Saul actually got mad at Jonathan and threw his spear at him. So then Jonathan tells David, "Hey, it's not safe. You should leave." They hug it out and part ways. Now the parting ways said at the end of the last chapter that in the Hebrew it's actually marked as the first verse of this chapter, so that's probably what this first footnote here is. It's just going to say that these verses are numbered a bit differently in the Hebrew. But that's all that says. So, yeah. And of course, keeping in mind, Saul's the current king, David was anointed as the next one. Saul obviously doesn't want David to take over the throne, but Jonathan cared more about David staying alive, at least, than about, Saul getting to remain the king. So anyway, that's the situation going into this chapter, and yes, I did this last chapter, but I'll mention it here too. I went dark mode with this because of the lighting situation in the room being different. Figured it would be better than having a bunch of bright white light shining in my face. Anywho. Okay. So here we go. 1 Samuel chapter 21. David went to the town of Nob to see Ahimelech the priest. Ahimelech trembled when he saw him. "Why are you alone?" he asked. "Why is no one with you?" "The king has sent me on a private matter," David said. "He told me not to tell anyone why I am here. I have told my men where to meet me later. Now what is there to eat? Give me 5 loaves of bread or anything else you have." So, apparently David went to the town of Nob. It's unsure why he went to see the priest, but that's where he went. Maybe he's going to seek guidance from God on where to go from there. I don't know, but anyway, he and Ahimelech are talking. Apparently David wants, also likely needs some food. So he asks for bread or whatever else might be available. And then we get to verse 4. "We don't have any regular bread," the priest replied. "But there is the holy bread, which you can have if your young men have not slept with any women recently." "Don't worry," David replied. I never allow my men to be with women when they are on a campaign. And since they stay clean even on ordinary trips, how much more on this one? Since there was no other food available, the priest gave him the holy bread, the bread of the presence that was placed before the Lord in the tabernacle. It had just been replaced that day with fresh bread. Now, if I remember right, this was bread that really only the priests were supposed to have. If anybody. So, either the priest, wanted to make sure that he was following orders from the king's men, because, remember, David was named a commander of some of Saul's armies. But anyway, that's not what David's really doing here, but using his official position in a way, or at least taking advantage of it, he has a little extra sway. A little extra say with the priests as to what they might or might not end up doing. Because most of the time, it was kind of assumed that the king and his officials were in line with God's will. So they weren't necessarily inclined to argue most of the time over matters like that, especially if the matters seemed relatively trivial to the priests. But anyway, enough about that. So, Ahimelech offers this bread to David and says that, hey, as long as y'all have not been with any women lately, it's fine. Then we get to verse 7. Now Doeg the Edomite, Saul's chief herdsman, was there that day, having been detained before the Lord. David asked Ahimelech, "Do you have a spear or sword?" The king's business was so urgent that I didn't even have time to grab a weapon. "I only have the sword of Goliath the Philistine, whom you killed in the valley of Elah," the priest replied. "It is wrapped in a cloth behind the ephod. Take that if you want it, for there is nothing else here." "There's nothing like it," David replied. "Give it to me." So, David had some history with that weapon already, which is probably hinted at, like, him saying there's nothing like it. It kind of gives me the vibe of, like, yes, something familiar. Knowing well that he can work with such a thing and use it. Let me look at the footnote there. Meaning of the Hebrew is uncertain about the part where it says Doeg was detained before the Lord. I assume that just means he had some sort of matter to discuss, attend to, or whatever with the priests or some people in that area. Possibly matters of, anything he needed to do personally regarding certain laws or whatever. I don't know. Maybe he was made unclean by something recently. Who knows? Anyway, this guy Doeg was there. And that probably hints at the fact that he will then be aware of David's visit and anything that he takes with him when he leaves. So anyway, then we get to verse 10. So David escaped from Saul and went to King Achish of Gath. But the officers of Achish were unhappy about his being there. "Isn't this David, the king of the land?" they asked. Isn't he the one the people honor with dances, singing Saul has killed his thousands and David his 10,000s? David heard these comments and was very afraid of what King Achish of Gath might do to him. So he pretended to be insane, scratching on doors and drooling down his beard. Finally, King Achish said to his men, "Must you bring me a madman? We already have enough of them around here. Why should I let someone like this be my guest?" Okay, so it just says David escaped. Doesn't follow up on the whole Doeg guy and whether or not he's aware of where David's headed. But he's going to King Achish of Gath. Now, Gath was a Philistine town, so they would have been particularly aware of, you know, David's prior deeds and what the people were saying about him. Because it was his defeat of Goliath, who was from Gath, that was a big part of them kind of singing this victory song that they mentioned. But I guess in order to maybe get out of the situation, David pretended to be insane. And I think that was just so he didn't end up getting killed there on the spot. But otherwise, I guess that's all we get for the moment. So maybe we'll figure out where David is headed in the next chapter. Okay, so this is the early going of David's attempts to find a place to live outside of Israel. Because if he stays in Israel, Saul's going to keep trying to hunt him down. Now, apparently, first he goes to a priest to get supplies, I guess. I mean, seemingly at least food and a weapon to help protect himself. And then, after that, apparently he tries going to the Philistines. I mean, they were... The Philistines were a powerful enough force and generally had enough influence within Israel that they would have had some fairly regular interactions, although it generally wasn't great most of the time, so kind of understandable that some of the commanders would not want David there. So, I don't know, we'll see what other places David goes to and methods he tries for all this in the upcoming chapters, probably. But that's it for this one. So, as always, like and share if you enjoyed the video. Subscribe to the channel if you want to see more, or follow if you're watching on some platform besides YouTube. Do whatever you need to do for your respective viewing platform. And look down in the description for info on social media pages and other places to find and follow my content. And down below that, leave your comments with any thoughts you have. So that's going to do it for now. Hope you're all doing well. Hopefully I'll see you soon for another video. But whatever the case is, till next time, stay cool, people.